Thanks, Noah. At the Capitol tonight, funding for several big federal agencies set to run out in less than an hour. Although the Senate passed 5 long-term spending bills, the House is not expected to return to D.C. until Monday, meaning a partial government shutdown is set to happen. Funding for Homeland Security was a big contingent point this week. Protests have continued nationwide after 2 people were killed by federal agents in Minnesota. Under a deal between Senate Democrats and President Trump, lawmakers separated DHS funding from the rest of the spending measures and funded the agency for 2 weeks.
The American people are crying out for change. They see what's happening on our streets.
Hold the people accountable in ICE who may have broken the law, but stand up for those in the field trying to protect America.
If the House is able to pass a plan early next week, the effects of the partial shutdown will be minimal. Those protests against DHS and ICE have made their way to Northwest Arkansas. Tonight in the Bentonville Square, people gathered for a vigil for the victims in the Minnesota shootings, Renee Good and Alex Preddy. It was hosted by a newly founded group, Love Over Fear NWA. The founder of the group says the goal is to rally against ICE activity in a peaceful manner.
This is a peaceful. All we are is peaceful. We don't accept violence and we don't accept hatred. We are all angry, but that it's no right to bring hatred and spew anger towards other people. This is now more than ever a time to love your neighbor.
A vigil for VA ICU nurse Alex Preddy is also scheduled for Sunday. That'll be at the VA hospital in Fayetteville. Well, thousands of other protesters nationwide marched in the streets, calling out of work and school. Many also participated in an economic protest, choosing to not shop or spend a single dollar. Tanya Motorsitsky shows us the different protests happening today in the Arkansas state capitol.
For some local businesses, participating in the national economic blackout protest does not mean closing their doors. It means opening them differently.
My mom's an immigrant, and so I've connected with the matter on a personal standpoint.
At Bark Bar, a doggy daycare and bar, staff say reopening after days of ICE closures was necessary, but they also wanted to be a safe space and are not expecting purchases, just presents.
We do have a lot of different communities that come here, and we just want everyone to know that they're welcome, along with their furry friends or without their furry friends.
Malia Perry and CC Conger Porty says Bark Bar became their safe space, and they want to be able to do the same for others.
I know a lot of local businesses are struggling to have their regulars come in and bringing in their community with the weather, with the protests. Some people that are regulars here are scared to be out and about. So this Bark Bar is where I found my community.
On the other side of downtown by the airport, outside of the Little Rock ICE facility, protests happen daily.
We've been here every day since November 4th.
Elder Matthew Bryant is encouraging people to avoid big box stores and instead shop locally.
Small businesses that, have suffered this past week because of the weather. So we'd like people to do any shopping today. Please do it at local and small business.
He says their message continues to be loud and clear, even after the national protest.
ICE and this administration are violating the civil rights of people who live in this country, whether they're citizens or not.
That was Tanya Motorsitsky reporting. Meanwhile, plans for an ICE facility in Oklahoma's capital have been halted. It comes a week after DHS officials reached out to a business owner to negotiate buying a property. OKC Mayor David Holt posted on social media he met with the property owner and confirmed no deal with DHS was ongoing. A DHS proposal said the property was potentially going to be used to detain and process hundreds of immigrants. Mayor Holt addressed the concerns from some state lawmakers and residents who say they don't want to see ICE in their city.
The Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution is a bit of a legal absolute, and it's a very powerful thing. And so, nonetheless, we often have to explain it to our residents. But, our police officers cannot impede ICE. They cannot arrest ICE. They cannot stop ICE from entering a city.
Before the negotiations halted, Oklahoma City Council met to formally request DHS follow the city's special permitting process if it went further in acquiring the facility. Well, in Arkansas, the proposed Franklin County prison continues to be a debate among state lawmakers. State Senator Brian King hosted a press conference in Charleston to argue his view that the state has mismanaged the project. Governor Sanders and the Board of Corrections say the prison will help the state's prison bed shortage. King says an original plan for the prison was derailed, in turn costing taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars. King says he's seeking an investigation into the spending involved in the project.
Look at WellPath. Their original contract that was supposed to happen was $1.2 billion. It later, after Mr. Fury called it a Cadillac plan, said he was going to do it cheaper. I still got the contract a year and a half later for $1.6 billion. $350 million, folks, is what they cost you.
The governor's office sent us a statement today saying, quote, Governor Sanders has been a diligent steward of Arkansas tax dollars. Any claim to the contrary is divorced from reality. Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton and FBI Director Kash Patel are set to host a law enforcement roundtable at the state capitol tomorrow. They'll be joined by Senator John Bozeman and Attorney General Tim Griffin. A press release says the four will give remarks at a press conference after the roundtable. We asked Cotton's office what's expected to be discussed tomorrow and if local policing agencies were also involved, but did not hear back tonight. Tonight, the Fort Smith community gathered at Fort Chaffee Crossing to hear a powerful personal story of survival and strength. A Holocaust survivor shared her life journey, a firsthand account that few are still able to give. 5 News reporter Laura Castleman takes us there.
A lot of people gather here today to hear the story of Holocaust survivor Lydia Klimek and her experiences during the Holocaust. Now, this is all in observance of Holocaust International Remembrance Day.
Lydia Klimek was just 5 years old when she and her family were taken to a Nazi labor camp during World War II.
It was incredibly important to get her in here and have her tell her story to Arkansans of all ages.
Now, she's sharing that story, one she lived before she was old enough to fully understand it.
The war started September 1st, and they invaded Warsaw. And I was born November 17.
Born in Warsaw during the German invasion of Poland, Klimek described the realities of life under Nazi occupation and the random brutality people faced.
Not just Jewish people, but also Polish people and other nationalities were just pulled together right off the street and shot or, taken to camps. One day, there was a knock on the door, and they were told just to grab whatever they can, and the Nazis took them away and put them in a boxcar, all of us in a boxcar.
She says her family was forced into German labor camps, where starvation, fear, and hard labor were part of daily life.
And we stayed there for a while, and down the road, my dad was made to work in the camp. What they were building is they were preparing for the V-2 missiles.
During that time, Klimek says her father lost an eye while working. Her family was moved from camp to camp until they were eventually liberated by the American military. Soon after, a chance encounter would change her life.
And my husband's family, which I didn't even know at that time, that, this was going to be my husband. It was just another family that we met on a train.
Klimek says even though she was so young, the trauma was real.
My parents were very diligent in cradling me and making sure that, I do okay and, I survived.
Klimek ends her story not as a victim, but as a witness, sharing her experiences with the new generation.
The event gave the people of Fort Smith a chance to remember the millions of lives lost during the Holocaust between 1933 and 1945, and the fact that Klimek's story still matters today. In Fort Smith, covering news where you live, Laura Castleman, 5 News.